Well, my friends, everybody that is just avid fans of mixed martial arts, they had to come to the conclusion that at one point this day would come, and that is the retirement of George Rush St.Pierre, the longtime reigning undisputed welterweight champion and the former UFC middleweight champion, has called it a career. And it's really bittersweet for me, to be quite honest. And to be quite honest, yeah, it is actually a little bit emotional because there's been so many great fighters along the way that will just stand the test of time. Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Joe Frazier. And notice there, I'm naming boxers. I'm not naming mixed martial artists. And honestly, I can make a true case that George St. Pierre is really the first mixed martial artist. If you really look at previous MMA fighters prior to George St. Pierre, they're really good fighters in one particular discipline, where George St. Pierre was essentially the first guy that was really able to put it all together. The boxing, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the Muay Thai, all of it. Literally becoming the most complete MMA fighter that I have ever seen. And knowing that I got to see his career from start to finish is one of the true blessings of my spectator life. I really have to say, I am so thankful to have grown up in the era that I've grown up in, watching the fights that I've watched, watching the sport of mixed martial arts turn into this global phenomenon. I always knew it was possible, and I knew it was possible because there was a guy out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, that would carry that torch for almost a decade. So, as not just a fan, but as an admirer of his career, what he was able to accomplish, what he meant to the sport, the way he embodied true mixed martial arts, true honor, true respect, true dedication, and the story of George St. Pierre, there is not much better in terms of all-time great. I can't think of anyone, not John Jones, not Anderson Silva, not any fighter of years past that did it the way George St. Pierre did. There's just not one out there. And I am a little emotional because I feel like this guy was a huge part of my adolescence, of my teenager years, and the 4 years where he wasn't around. I greatly missed him, greatly missed watching him fight. But I was still able to admire him from afar, with his career as far as training other fighters and just being GSP. And knowing that those days are over, knowing that I'll never see him fight again, I'm completely okay with that, completely content with that, because his last performance, UFC 217, was as good a last performance as we will ever see inside the mixed martial arts cage, inside the UFC octagon. But, man, that guy was great. I know for a fact I will never see anything like that again. Just like boxing fans knew that they'd never see anything like Tyson, just like boxing fans knew they'd never see anything like Ali, like Joe Louis, like Rocky Marciano, like Sugar Ray Leonard. I could go on and on and on. But George St. Pierre is in that category as one of the most revered, respected fighters to ever live. And I'm blessed, very blessed, that I got to watch this guy fight. And taking us back now, I remember watching George St. Pierre climb that welterweight ladder that led him to the Matt Hughes title fight that he lost, and wondering, is this guy going to bounce back? That was his first setback. He responded, he bounced back, he got the title from Matt Hughes, and then his first title defense, he suffered another setback, which was against Matt Serra. After that, avenging that Matt Serra loss in dominant fashion in Montreal, he went on the greatest run that a champion has ever embarked on. Now, I know Anderson Silva, is also at that same time had a very great run. But I believe that the level of competition for George was far tougher than that of Anderson Silva. And George was far more impressive against the competition that he fought, virtually dispatching all of them, maybe not by finish, but by complete and total domination. So people can debate this all day, but the best I've ever seen, and that's what I'm going by, is the best I've ever seen, is George St.Pierre. I've said that for years. I'll continue to say it. I will say that George St.Pierre is the greatest mixed martial artist ever until the day I die, because he is. And the true definition of being the greatest is something that's thrown around so often, but it's a dynamic that I think needs to be discussed. My definition of the greatest is somebody that not only has accomplished a hell of a career, but somebody that has embodied what it means to be a champion, what it means to be a professional. George St.Pierre is one of the greatest professionals in any sport that I've ever seen. Showing up to the press conferences in suits, he was one of the first fighters to do that. He was one of the first fighters to sound off against the UFC on the fact that they didn't have a drug testing program. He was the first fighter that sounded off on that fact and literally got what he wanted without even being a part of the sport. It took George St.Pierre to walk away from the sport, the greatest fighter ever, for the UFC to say to themselves, maybe he is right. That's the power of George St.Pierre. That is the clout that George St.Pierre had in this sport. There's no fighter that had that much clout, that much cojones. Not Conor, not Anderson, not John Jones. George St.Pierre did what was right by everybody. Always treated the media fairly, always conducted himself with the utmost professionalism. And outside of that, I'm not impressed by your performance to Matt Hughes, which he later went on to say he regretted saying. George St.Pierre was just the consummate professional. And I'm going to miss him. I really am. And I know I've said that before, but I really don't think people understand the weight that this guy had in his career. We're seeing the end of one of the greatest just pure athletes, not just fighter. I think he's the greatest mixed martial artist, but I think he's the greatest fighter. I think he's one of the greatest professionals in fighting history. And I'm going to miss him. George St.Pierre, thank you for the career that you had. You're my GOAT. You're my man. You'll always be my favorite fighter. And enjoy that retirement. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Takes Sports Podcast. Take care, everybody.